Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute or two to let folks come in, and then we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Stephen Payne. I'm the director of the Bronx County Historical Society. Thank you for joining us tonight for a presentation on the West Farms Memorial Gardens. It's a very interesting and very new, or at least renewed, I suppose you could say, topic in Bronx history that we'll be hearing about tonight. And I am going to introduce our presenters in a minute. Before I do so, however, I'd like to give a plug for a few other things we have coming up here. Um, all in-person events in the next couple weeks or so. This is our virtual program for this week. We should have some more virtual programs coming up in December and January. Um, but we try and do a mix these days. So this upcoming Tuesday at the Mott Haven, New York Public Library branch, we'll be having a program. It's the third of a series called South Bronx History Keepers. And it's a program designed to provide tools and space and an outlet for folks who are interested in local history. In this case, it's focused on Mott Haven, Melrose, the South Bronx. Our goal is to expand the program and hopefully New York Public Library branches or other community centers around the Bronx in the coming years. This is a program that's been going on for a few years already, starting in Mott Haven. And on Tuesday at 5 p.m., the Mott Haven New York Public Library branch, the session will be a storytelling night where community members will bring stories from their time, growing up in the Bronx or living in the Bronx, and we'll be sharing it as in small groups and providing tools on how to record those stories to make sure they're preserved for posterity. So that's one thing coming up. There are a couple of poetry related events coming up as well. And one of them is a poetry seminar in the Bronx County Archives. Another is an open mic at Poe Cottage. And we have an open house at our museum the Wednesday before Thanksgiving as well. You can find all of our events at bronxhistory.org. Just to give, a very brief overview of things coming up in November. Then we have more coming up in December and January as well. Stay tuned for all of that. A very wide range of things. And also just to give a plug for our exhibits that are up right now at our Museum of Bronx History in Poe Cottage. We have one new exhibit that just opened on October 31st. It's at both of our museums, both the Museum of Bronx History on Bainbridge and Edgar Allan Poe Cottage, on George A. Romero. He's a filmmaker. He grew up in Park Chester, responsible for Night of the Living Dead and other zombie movies, other horror movies, other kinds of movies. One of the most successful independent filmmakers of the 20th century from the Bronx. Where else? And yeah, we have most of his Bronx life is on display at the Museum of Bronx History, and a lot of his horror work and other work in genres is at Poe Cottage, and including some work that he did inspired by Edgar Allan Poe himself. And there's also an ongoing exhibit on Bronx music history, the history of hard rock, heavy metal, punk out of the Bronx at the Museum of Bronx History. We'll be having a new exhibit on street dance at the Museum of Bronx History opening in the new year. And there's more to say, but I'll shut up. You're not here to see me. You're here to hear from our very engaging presenters who I would like to introduce right now. So first of all, we have Laura James. Laura James serves her community as a member of Community Board 6 and manager at Bronx River Community Garden in West Farms. She is a professional artist and illustrator and founder of BX200.com, an online database for Bronx-based artists now in its 10th year. We also have Nilka Martell, a parks advocate, writer, and founder of Loving the Bronx. She also serves as the board chair of the Bronx River Alliance and president of the Friends of Pelham Bay Park. An environmentalist and community advocate, she has significantly contributed to the revitalization of the Bronx River and surrounding areas. And Nilka and Laura tonight, as I mentioned at the beginning, will be sharing what they have found so far, preliminary findings on and a plan of action on the West Farms Memorial Gardens. And I'll let them share the whole backstory, everything about it. They'll be doing their presentation first, and then we'll have time for audience Q&A afterwards. Folks can feel free to use the Q&A feature to, you know, add their questions, and then we'll get to them once we get to the Q&A portion. And if there's anyone who'd like to ask their question live, once we get to that point, we can enable voices as well. So thank you, Nilka, Laura, and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting us. We're very happy to be here. First slide, please. Okay, so I would like to say that this presentation has been pared down from a longer presentation that you can find online on our website at westfarmsmemorialgardens.org. There's a lot more information there. So this page, we're showing that this church was built in 1905. This is actually the second church. The original church was built across the street. I don't know that that we have a year for that, but it was it was before 1814. Or actually it was 1814 and that in 1814. That's when when the land was sold to the Presbyterian Church for $1. And then they built that original church on that land. This church was built almost 100 years later in 1905. Also, you can see that if you Google Beck Memorial Presbyterian Church, it comes up as Beck Memorial Presbyterian Church and Graveyard, which I was sort of surprised to see because, people didn't really know there was a graveyard there, but Google knows. So somebody knows. We just didn't know. Okay, next slide, please. Here you can see a bird's eye view of the neighborhood. You can see the Soldier Cemetery across the street from the burial ground site. Most people do know about the Soldier Cemetery because it's visible. It's been there for a very long time. Most people, when we talk about this project, they're like, oh, you mean the Soldier Cemetery? Of course, we know about that. But no, we're talking about across the street where you can see highlighted in yellow, it says burial ground site. You can see that Lambert houses is to the west to the east of the burial ground. You can see the lower Lambert houses, and then you also see how there are two exponentially bigger developments. These are the new Lambert houses. So they're tearing down these you can't see my mouse here, or can you? No. Are you? No, you can't see my mouse. Okay, so you can see that there are shorter buildings, yes, that are the Lambert houses, and then you see there are two very humongous high rises that are there as well. So that's the immediate area. Next slide, please. Nilka?
Sure. Thank you, Laura. So I was born and raised in the Bronx, went to Catholic school here, and also Catholic high school. And when it comes to slavery, usually it's something that we're taught is down south. So it wasn't until about 15 years ago that I learned about slavery in the Bronx. And sometime in 2010, Lloyd Alton, through the Bronx County Historical Society, published this book, Blacks in the Colonial Bronx. This book showcases various documents, records of sales of enslaved people, portions of wills, census information, estate inventories, and there are a couple of blurbs there. Particularly for the West Farms section, at page 96, we learn that Elizabeth married Peter Delancey, a member of the prominent New York City merchant family and the brother of James Delancey, long the lieutenant governor of the colony. Peter Delancey owned property in the West Bronx on the west bank of the Bronx River, where the southern portion of the Bronx Zoo is. Black slaves helped the family. We later learn in the book uh, through a runaway ad published in the New York Gazette back in April 5th, 1756, where it reads, "Runaway on Monday morning, the 29th of March, from Peter Delancey, Esquire of Westchester, a middle-sized mulatto Negro called Hannibal, about 5 feet 2 inches." And there's a reward for his return of 40 shillings. We also read about a particular occurrence in January 1767, published in the New York Journal or the General Advertiser Supplement, about an incident that happened where it had been very cold for quite a few days, and then the weather suddenly turned warmer. So the advertisements reads, "Not a bridge on a road except at Norwalk or Kingsbridge are left standing. Mr. Delancey's mill at Westchester was such shattered, and his store near it, in which was a large quantity of ciders, apples, etc., was carried away with several Negroes that were in it, who were with difficulty saved by boats." So just establishing that in the West Farms area, there were enslaved Black people, and really wondering where these people were laid to rest. And I'll pass it back to you, Laura.
Okay, next slide, please. I just want to mention, I forgot to mention that this neighborhood is considered a low-income neighborhood with a lot of subsidized housing. CB6 has a very large number of homeless shelters, and 60% of the residents receive some form of income assistance. This slide is showing the beautiful Miss Charmin Switzer, who walked into the community garden a few Saturdays, well, not a few Saturdays ago, a few months ago in August. She had been coming with Justice for Families on Sundays, and this particular Sunday, she said to me, "Do you know about the burial ground behind the church?" And of course, I didn't know about it. So I had my iPad there, and we Googled it. And this is the page that came up, or one of the pages that came up, where you can clearly see that it says a graveyard for strangers and black slaves, is mentioned at this site on East 180th Street. So this was our first, you know, piqued our interest. What is this about? Okay, next slide, please. And so this information is from that slide, from that page. Talks about how 40 veterans of 4 wars are buried at the Soldier Cemetery. Talks about how this West Farms is described as a flourishing little village of about 300 inhabitants. Goes on to mention some of the names of people buried in the Soldier Cemetery. And it also mentions how when they were grading and widening the streets in West Farms during the first decade of the 20th century, disturbed graves in the cemetery next to the old Presbyterian Church, as well as in the forgotten paupers burial ground on the south side of East 180th Street, Beck Memorial. And when the public learned that the soldiers' graves are being neglected and desecrated in the West Farms, the committee rededicated the cemetery as the West Farms Soldiers Cemetery in 1910s. Okay. We also learned about this sign that says West Farms Soldiers Cemetery, Bronx Landmark, 1 block west, that is still hanging. They call it a curious sign because it's actually not a block west. It's right there. So we're not, it's kind of, they don't really know who put it there. It's kind of a weird sign, but it's still there. And it also goes on to talk about this queer old Miss Hullen and talks about how she was buried at the West Farm Cemetery. Okay, next slide, please.
So back in 2016, I had attended a lecture at Woodlawn Cemetery where Patrick Rafferty of the Westchester County Historical Society was presenting on his new, at that time, his new book, Cemeteries of the Bronx. And this is the information that's part of his book, including these maps, Samuel Street being the old name of East 180th, and indicating that there were several burial grounds in the area. So you can see, the different plots. So B would be behind the present church, the old Beck Memorial Church, which had been a private burial ground for the Lawrence family. And when the Presbyterian Church purchased it in the deed, it did mention the Lawrence family burial ground, and reserving the rights for the Lawrence family to have their families buried there. We can go to the next slide. When we went to the Bronx County Historical Society and when we reached out to Patrick Rafferty to ask him for his resources, he pointed us back to this transcript that was written sometime before 1954, very many years, after the purchase of the church or the establishment of these cemeteries. But highlighted here is the plot that is southwest of Samuel Street, which is present day 180th, a much larger plot that was used for horse sheds and the surrounding land to be a graveyard for strangers and black slaves, in fact, a potter's field. So, the concept of having these memorial gardens is to pay homage, to people that may still be buried in that area. Next slide.
Okay, so in this slide, this is again from the old village of West Farms by Stephen Ray. And he talks about how the land outside of plot D from Rafferty's map, it says that was set aside a long strip of ground and sold it for private grave plots. And at a later time, Alfred Pettit, the local undertaker, laid out all the adjoining land eastward to Bryant Street, which is that long plot. So eastward to Bryant Street for single graves, calling it the West Farm Cemetery. And okay, so we have plot D, which is Bryant Street, and then we have the land east of that, and then we have Boston Road, which was already there at the time of this writing and in 1850. In fact, it's been there since the 1700s. So we can assume that they're talking about the land between, plot D, which is Bryant Street, and Boston Road, which is in fact where 1013 East 180th Street, Lambert Houses is today. And as I said here in this report, more research needs to be done to know, to know really if this was the village cemetery. And luckily, there are 3 names mentioned in this document right here on this page that there can be more research done on these people and on these the business that was there, this graveyard, which was a business. In fact, there was a picture at the Bronx Historical Society that it must have been from the 60s, the 50s, showing the house that was the undertaker's, his office, I guess. It was a place that it did exist. Okay, next slide, please.
So here we have a copy of the deed from 1814, where the Lawrence family and others sold the property to the Presbyterian Church. The deed records that the purchase was for $1. And part of this transaction uh, did reserve the right for the Lawrence family to be buried in the churchyard cemetery. Again, if we can go to the next slide. Again, there are various plots here, right? So looking at what was built, the church that existed prior to, right? So the churchyard in the 1815, but then looking at, which is plot A, but then plot B, which is south of 180th Street, which is present day Beck Memorial. And as Laura mentioned, D and E is where Lambert houses exist, and then C is the reserved, the fenced off landmarked present day soldier cemetery. Next slide.
Yeah, and so here we just have some photos of these places today with the Reverend David Casella's Plaza that is on plot A, this big building here. Then in the middle, we have the Soldier Cemetery, and then you can see Bryant Street. And I would just mention that in the picture in the middle on the bottom, you can see all these gravestones together. And apparently when they were excavating Bryant Street, they removed some bones from this area. And I'm pretty sure they took them away, but they put these gravestones here, I guess as a memorial to the people that whose bones they moved. Next slide. So this is our eyewitness. This is the man that spoke with Miss Sharman and explained to her how he used to play behind the church when he was, I guess, 10 years old, about 9, 10 years old, and he saw gravestones back there. Of course, we don't know whose stones they are, but there was a graveyard, gravestones that he actually did see. Next slide.
So on Patrick Rafferty's book, again, it makes mention to the slave and paupers graveyard that was forgotten until they were constructing East 180th Street. And this is similar to when you think about the roads that were being built in the Hunts Point area, and how when they built out that area in Hunts Point, they preserved the Hunt family and the Leggett family and the Tiffany's family, knowing that there was a slave burial ground, but making no mention of it. So, during that construction, there were bones that were discovered, and they were moved to other sites, but we're very unclear whether or not some bones or some bodies still exist behind the current Beck Memorial Church. Next slide.
So most recently, last year, we had a few members of the community come to the community board asking, if we could find out what's happening with Beck Memorial, because there were a lot of raccoons kind of living back there and roaming the neighborhoods, and people kind of hanging out back there, lots of garbage and just all kinds of, it's a nuisance. And so people came to the community board. We actually had no answers for them, but we did write a letter to the presbytery, and they actually didn't get back to us, if I remember correctly. Then earlier this year, we had a group developer come to the CB proposing to build a 13-story building with 116 units. it never really even occurred to us, I don't think, that the property was so big because we just, nobody had really seen it, but it is a pretty large property. In any case, we didn't like that idea mostly because it was subsidized housing, and there is so much subsidized housing right there on that very block, on that corner. So we figured, why not do something where people can buy into it so that we can build some wealth in this neighborhood instead of having everything subsidized. So we said no to that, but not because we thought there were people buried there, because we didn't know that. They didn't mention that at all. Okay, so you can see this is one of the renderings from their report about about the, building this huge building behind the church. Then later than that, but earlier than now, in July, there was a fire. And so that compromised the church greatly. And we're not sure if it can actually be saved. I don't know if it can actually be saved. It seems like the roof has caved in and there's an order from the city to stay out, if I'm not mistaken. And so we don't know what the state of the building really is. Okay, next slide.
So there are similar examples of slave burial grounds, particularly in Van Cortlandt and Hunts Point, which have some similarities, but also some contrasts. For both of these are on parkland. So the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance has done extensive research and has programming around the enslaved African burial grounds in Van Cortlandt Park. Within recent years, they have proper signage marking off the space. In Hunts Point, there was a teacher, Justin Zarka from PS 48, who took his kids down over a decade ago to the City Museum, and the kids found a photo that said Hunts Point slave burying ground, and the kids were really curious to know where this slave burial grounds was. So they did some research, and they found that it was indeed just south of the fenced off Drake Park in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. And they what they were able to do was get some ground penetrating radar study done and locate where these bodies are. So they're just south of the fenced off area. And then they were able to work with Parks Department. They got some monies through Senator Klein to get some proper signage there, which Parks Department is still working that out. And they were able to change the signage at Drake Park to not only commemorate the Hunt and the Leggett and the Tiffany family, but also to talk about the enslaved people in that particular burial ground. There's also an indigenous person that was enslaved, and they were able to look through different wills where they found the name of one of the slaves. So the new signage does incorporate the enslaved people, and at least the name of one African enslaved person. We could go to the next slide. So, just some background of the West Farms area. It was established in 1663. You had various families that owned the land, including the Delancey family. A lot of old timers refer to the waterfall at River Park still as Delancey's Mills. So just knowing that there was these prominent families that lived there and slaves that were working in this area. The Delancey family actually is buried in St. Peter's Church, but as we know from history, the slaves would not have been buried with the families. So we do believe that somewhere in this area or behind the church is the final resting place for these enslaved people. We could go to the next slide.
So with this, we're winding it up now. So with these final slides, okay, so this lot is owned by the Presbyterian Church, and they are private. they do want to sell the land, and it has been abandoned for over 10 years. The people don't worship in that space anymore. And as we said, it's pretty much dilapidated at this point. So, but we would really love to see this project come to fruition if possible. It would require a partner organization, somebody, a developer that would take it on. And really, it would, whether they build a building there for with housing or some other kind of structure and keep a part of the space dedicated to this, to the graveyard and keep it preserved, I guess I would say, as a graveyard. Whether they do that or not, we don't know. We're just taking this as far as we can go and seeing what we can do with this, because it kind of fell into our laps. And Nilka and I, we're Capricorns. We like a challenge. So but all that said, what we would really love to see is a developer work with the presbytery to, lease this land, secure this land, buy it, rent it, whatever they're going to do, to develop this memorial garden, and also potentially a two-story community center. So basically, we're saying a small community center. We're not looking for a huge building of any sort on that space. We have many developments in this area. As I said, there's lots and lots of subsidized housing, lots of building being done. And, we have these developers come to the community board asking, well, what can we do for you? What do you want? And a lot of times we say, we'd like a community center, you know? And so, we said that to one of them very recently, who shall remain nameless. But hopefully one of these developers will take this on and make a community center for us in at this space. Okay, next slide. What do you think?
So what are our next steps? Next steps really entail verifying that there's a graveyard there that has enslaved people, sources prior to Stephen Ray's transcript of West Farms that was compiled, before 1954. Finding some type of sponsorship, whether that's an existing developer in the area or a new developer, or maybe even the city council member to cover, or, we were in conversation just before the presentation, maybe a college, Columbia University, to see if they can sponsor a ground penetrating radar study to see if there are any bones there. We have moved on the city level. We did apply for landmarking, and we are inquiring for it to be listed on the New York State and national registers, but that does require for the GPR to be done to apply for. So we are moving, in various ways. We do realize that, unlike Van Cortlandt and the Hunts Point Burial Ground, this is private property. We've been in conversation with the Presbyterian Church. And really trying to figure out what's the best way forward, and looking for support, whether that's, amateur historians or anyone that has information. I did see that among the participants is Tom Casey, who has been really instrumental in unearthing a lot of history in the Bronx. So really thinking of, who can help advance this project, and who would be interested in helping us along the way. And with that, I'll pass it over to Angelina.
Next slide, please.
Oh, we might have to unmute Angelina, Dr. Payne.
Okay, let me see. Is it AM? Oh, here's Angelina. Okay. Angelina, I'm going to give you permission to talk here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. I don't think you can see me, but my name is Angelina Servos. Laura and Nilka are the creators of the. Now, can you see me?
No.
Now can you see me? All right. Hi, guys. But I'm grateful to be a part of this in any way. I'm sort of on the community engagement side of things. So please stay in touch. So we thank you all for joining us for this presentation. I'm going to put our website in the chat. You scroll down just a little bit is an area for you to join our mailing list. We're going to send out our first newsletter very, very soon, just to remind everyone of those first steps and keep those calls open. To reiterate what Nilka said, we are looking really for any help that we can get in getting more information about this historic site. And we do need some more followers over on TikTok and Instagram. So it's the exact same handle. It's West Farms plural and Gardens plural. West Farms Memorial Gardens. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok. And please head over to our website to sign up for that newsletter, and we will definitely be in touch with you all.
Thank you. Okay, there are just some of our sources for this presentation, and I believe that's it. Dr. Payne.
Okay, great. I'm gonna stop the share and then we'll see what all Q&A we have going on here. Just give me a second here. Okay. So, looks like there's a few questions and comments already. I'll go ahead and read them out to you all, and then you all can, you know, decide amongst yourselves who would like to respond, if any response, is warranted. So first, this is from Marion. It's Bryant Avenue, not Bryant Street. Um, okay. Um, Here's a question from Adam Aronson. Both the Hunts Point and Van Cortlandt burial grounds have been able to use ground penetrating radar to confirm unsettled soil and hence probably burials. Has that been considered in West Farms? I think you all already answered that, but go ahead if any of you want to riff on that some more, feel free to do so.
It definitely needs to be done, right? But and again, I already, spoke about this. The difference here is that this is private property, right? So in Van Cortlandt and Drake, and the Hunts Point Burial Ground at Drake Park, it Parks Department allowed for the study to happen. Here, this is private property, so it's a little different. And I see that there is a question, two questions around Parks Department. We have been in conversation with Parks Department, but again, it is a private property, and Parks Department is on a shoestring budget, and it's just difficult for them to maintain the current properties that they have, in addition to all the other work, right? That's not park related, that they're responsible for, including street trees and green infrastructure, that, they're just not in a position, to take over, a project like this.
Looks like Brian Buckley has a hand up. I'm gonna go ahead and give Brian the mic here. Okay. Brian, you'll just have to unmute yourself. And if you're having a hard time with that, we'll go on to another question. But if you figure it out, we'll go ahead and give you the floor here. Okay. Here's another question. Sorry if I missed this part, but are the owners of this neglected space willing to sell / named their price?
Well, they are willing to sell. They're wanting to sell. They said to us that they are, being fined and lots of different things that they don't want to deal with, let's say. But we looked for the price online, can't find it there. So I don't know. It might be private, but it is for sale.
Okay, great. Let me see. Brian, any luck in unmuting yourself? It doesn't look like it. So other questions, please, or hands up if you'd like to ask your question live. Okay, here's a couple more. Have you been able to engage Lehman College or Fordham University history departments in this work?
Not yet.
Not yet. We're actually, I'm reaching out to Fordham tomorrow. But yeah, just, thinking about like other places, that have done these kind of studies is, super helpful.
And when we're asking for help, we're serious. So, if there are people here from Fordham or BMCC or any of these colleges in the Bronx, or we had some interest from Pratt University, people were in the architecture department in different places, where yes, we could use help.
Yeah. And we are, engaging the community. We went and spoke with the administrators at Fannie Lou Hamer High School to get the students involved. So we are doing work on the community engagement portion. But again, if anyone has, any contacts with like any of these colleges, please like feel free. Like we want this information. We want this to grow.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. A few more questions here. Thanks for this presentation. This is by Trina. Could the African Burial Ground Memorial Organization be a resource?
Yes. Yes, and we are making contact with these different groups, and there are quite a few of them, um, not just in the city, but nationwide, actually. And they are a big resource there. We just have to, get on their radar, I suppose.
Let's see, here's from another, let's see, can we ask the price or offer to cover cost of being fined to have ownership transferred?
I think, when we spoke to them, they really said that they were interested in selling or leasing. There was an express not just for the fines, but for the Presbyterian Church just needing the money. Laura, would you agree that that was
Hmm.
yeah? And even though he didn't mention a specific price, he said it would be, upwards than a few million, right? That's the proposals that they were getting.
Okay, let's see. This is a comment. Fordham was involved in the Hunts Point project. Someone else recommending Professor Mark Nason at Fordham as a contact. Let me see here. Oh, this is from Tom Casey. Many of the Black members of the West Farms community moved when they purchased the Centerville Church, is the AME Church, and gravesite in Unionport, just outside Parkchester, was purchased in 1880 or earlier. So that could be an interesting lead too. And a lot of those burials were moved, reinterred in Westchester in the early 1900s. But anyway, there could be some family links that could be traced out through that their discussion of that cemetery in Patrick Rafferty's book. But that's a great point, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, let's see. Here's a question. Do you know if the New York City school curriculum deals much with enslaved people in the New York area?
I mean, I don't think it does. I, I don't think it is. I know that, Justin Sarka at PS 48 had a curriculum around it with his students, but I don't think that it exists for all students in DOE.
Okay, let's see. Here's more a statement. We have successfully found descendants of people enslaved in the Bronx. Happy to discuss more how we have done so. Please email me, Adam Aronson.
Adam, thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
The name in the chat is the info in the chat.
Let me see. Yeah, Adam, if you want to, let me see, share your email address uh, with us if you can do that privately, or if you don't mind it being public, you can do that. But that way we'll have it. I have it on the registration, which I could share as well. But
I like this Ash Acevedo is asking where will the where will funding come from to buy? I thought it said, where will we get the funds? I thought you were gonna help us get money, Ash. Okay, I read that wrong. But yeah, we're gonna I don't think that we're actually trying to raise money to buy this land, Nilka. I don't think that that's really our goal here. We just want to identify the developer or the partner that will do that because, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Church
And then,
built
and
with the asbestos and just taking a church down like that, whether you take it down or build it back, it's going to be very, very costly.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the objective more is if we can identify that there's bodies behind the church, it would be just to preserve that space behind the church.
Let's see, here's Sabrina Torres. I had introduced my colleague at Bronx Community College in the history department to the project, and she expressed that she is happy to connect you with all those of the Flatbush African Burial Ground Coalition. Angelina has her contact info if you're interested in connecting.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Sabrina.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Other questions or comments or if anyone wants to ask a question live, now's your time to do so. Oh, here's another one. Are there any regulations regarding preservation for private owners?
I think that there are regulations on cemeteries, just generally on cemeteries, but I guess going back to the ground penetrating radar, we really want to see if there are bare bodies there, but then again, if they start to build buildings and they dig into the ground, they might also find bodies. So,
That's right. And there's at the New York State level, there's an unmarked burial ground law or unmarked burials law where, if a developer or if anyone, comes across an unmarked grave, if they're excavating or during any kind of activity, there's a whole process where, it has to be reported to the police, the coroner's office, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in theory, I'm sure this does happen, unfortunately. In theory, I imagine that, someone could not report it and just continue to build. Um, but uh, but
no,
yeah,
we're going to be watching them though. Don't worry about that.
but yeah, it's discovering that kind of thing mid-excavation would definitely slow down any kind of construction. So in theory, it would be in a developer's best interest to know all the facts before any excavation was done. So, hopefully it could be pitched that way if there is a developer that buys the land. But
Right.
yeah, let's see. Tom Casey also said Fordham University can help. There are grants available to co-partner with. At New York Botanical Gardens, I did some research on the old Jesuit graveyard, now Daffodil Hill.
Oh,
Oh, this is Angel. Oh, thanks,
Oh,
Angel.
it's Angel.
I think there might be two Thomas Casey. So one might be Thomas Casey, one might be Angel Hernandez, Bronxboro historian. Um, but uh, but yeah, or maybe they're both Angel. But anyway, um, okay, great.
to know Fordham, definitely.
Thank you, Angel. We appreciate that. Bronx historian, same account. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, someone has their hand raised. Joan, I'm gonna give you permission to talk. Let's see here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, this was just a great presentation. I'm originally from the Bronx, but I've been living in Chicago for the past 40 years, but my heart is still.
Yeah.
I grew up on Marshallou Parkway near Bedford Park Boulevard. Anyway, it seems to me with what you know thus far that there really can't be any development until there is that kind of, what did you call it? The deep penetration. My son is a
Mhm.
historian. He works for a small company in the southeast part of the United States where he's a part of a multidisciplinary team of archaeologists, anthropologists. He's the historian where he does archival research, where they have to identify the historical significance of areas before there's development. And given how much you know already, I don't know, it might be a bit of a buffer where a developer can't come in and do anything until they find out whether or not there are bones there.
Joan, that's what we're hoping for. And that's why we're here, Joan.
Yeah, no. So I'm actually going to call him. He lives in Brooklyn.
Oh, thank you, Joan. Thank you.
And I've been taking notes, so I'm going to let him know. And I have your website, and hopefully he'll contact you. And my only question is, I don't know whether there's a difference between private versus public land, but I don't think so, because he's been working on projects for a number of years in different states in the Southeast that are a combination of both. So I wish you all the best, and I'm going to keep my eyes on this.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. We know you love the Bronx. You're still here after 40 years.
Oh my God, I love the Bronx. That's my heart.
I love that.
Thank you, Joan.
Mhm.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. Any other questions before we end for tonight? Now is your chance, or forever hold your peace. I'll just give it a few seconds to make sure we don't miss anyone. Okay. Well, this is a good place to end. This is from someone saying thank you so much for this presentation. I really hope your plans come to fruition, because our neighborhood deserves this kind of community project. And then there's also a suggestion on looking Nilka and Laura in the Bronx Historical Society collections for potentially things from Bert Sack. We'll have to look, because there may be something filed under his name, or something that he written filed something else that didn't pop up the first time you all came. So we'll take a look and see. So great. Thank you both, Laura and Nilka.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
know that the Bronx Historical Society lends its full support to your work. And yeah, I'd like to give a plug for anyone who thinks they may have information, or who's interested and wants to help doing research or whatever, to lend your help to this very worthwhile project. And yes, keep in touch with us, everyone, and sign up for the West Farms Memorial Gardens newsletter. If you're not already signed up for the Bronx Historical Society newsletters, sign up for our newsletter as well, because we'll keep people informed as we hear. So thank you both very much. Angelina, do you have a closing comment? I see the hand raised here.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. You pretty much summed up what I was going to say. I just wanted to reiterate what Laura mentioned earlier. Like, this is it. These are the project makers. We're not backed by, any federal department, any government department. It's just people who are from the Bronx and love the Bronx. So if you have a suggestion, if you think like later on today and this week, you're like, that would be a great connection, like, help us out, reach out to us. Send people our info. What we're really trying to do is spread the word about this project and hopefully get people just as excited about it as we are. And it looks like people already are. So we can use any help that we could get.
Right. And
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We really appreciate it.